Hi everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just one second, we'll get started here. Thanks so much for being here. Can everyone see my slide deck?
Well, we see your screen share.
Perfect.
Your,
Yep.
It's your desktop,
yeah.
though.
Oh, so it's not the Canva slide deck?
Nope.
No, it's
It's
just your
just
desktop.
background.
Weird. Okay.
Lake Tahoe.
Thank you for that because that's been an issue in the past where I select the one, but it doesn't actually work. Okay, how about now? Can you see my slide deck?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another West Virginia Outdoor Economy webinar series. Really excited to be with you today. Today we're talking about something for me is often like kind of a puzzle. And today, hopefully, we'll be able to help demystify some of that. What we're talking about today is preparing in advance of an injury, primarily around the topic of insurance. And we have a really incredible presenter that's with us today to be able to share her expertise. Before we jump into the main content of the webinar today, a quick announcement from the WVOEDC. I'm your host. My name is Corey Lilly. I'm the manager of outdoor community development here at the OEDC. And if you're not familiar with the OEDC, our mission, our purpose is to address population loss across West Virginia. And we do that through our mission of empowering our local partners on the ground to be able to advance the outdoor economy because we fundamentally believe that West Virginia's sustainable competitive advantage is our natural assets and being able to activate them and develop them in such a way that allows for the outdoor economy to flourish. We think will create vibrant communities across West Virginia. So we do that through two different pillars. We have our talent attraction and retention team, and we have our outdoor economy team. Our talent attraction and retention team have a couple of different programs that you may be familiar with. That's Ascend West Virginia, where we attract remote workers from outside of the state to relocate to West Virginia. Then we have our First Descent program, where we're keeping our brightest and most talented graduates from WVU and Marshall in the state of West Virginia uh, to be a part of the workforce. And then on our outdoor economy side, we have lots of different programs. This webinar being one of those programs to help support our outdoor businesses and nonprofits. But we have our trails training and education resource center, and that is we have a mobile trails lab that travels across the state that has in-person trainings. We have a calendar that's out right now, so there's different topics such as rock rigging, rock armoring, sustainable trails 101, sustainable design. We have a lot of different trainings that our team can actually come and work with your nonprofit or with your professional staff on site to be able to help them develop their skills so that they'll be more equipped to take on the challenges of what it means to manage a trail system. We also have our where we support our outdoor businesses, and this webinar is a part of a larger webinar series that is for our outdoor businesses. Our last one, which I encourage everyone to check on our resource library and on our YouTube channel, was with digital relativity. It was a really incredible webinar around the different types of visitors and how to appease each one of them from their different characteristics. We have today that we're talking about insurance, and then we're talking a little bit about AI, but we have a whole nother series or a whole nother fleet of webinars to come later in the year, and we're really fortunate to partner with so many incredible folks across the state that you see here with their logos on the side. If this is something that you would like to partner with us on to be able to get some of this content in front of your following and your network, we'd love to partner with you to be able to get some of that content that's relevant to them. We have some of our outdoor community meetups that we do across the state. These are local gatherings of the movers and shakers to learn about projects and things that are taking place in communities. We do them all across the state, northern West Virginia, southern West Virginia. The next one that we have is we are hosting the expo during the New River Gorge Bike Festival. That will be at Ace Adventure Resort on October 3rd. If you'd like to set up a table and be a part of that expo during the festival, please let me know. This is the inaugural uh, bike festival of the New River Gorge. So I'm really excited to now pass it over to our featured presenter, Ruthie Rivers from Granite Insurance, to talk to us about preparing in advance of an injury. Thanks so much for being with us, Ruthie, and feel free to take the screen away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Corey. Let's see. Let me start sharing my screen here with you guys real quick. And can you let me know if you're seeing it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Fantastic. Um, it was a fantastic introduction just to, I guess, just kind of add a little bit more and just kind of like give you guys some context on the perspective from which I'm speaking today. So yeah, my name is Ruthie Rivers. I'm an adventure and entertainment risk consultant with Granite Insurance. So Granite Insurance, we're based in Granite Falls, North Carolina, and we've got other offices. Like I live in the Boone area, so the northwest corner of North Carolina is where I live, not so far from you guys. We started as like a local commercial lines, personal lines, just kind of regular insurance agency. And then about 15 years ago, we really found nationwide niches in the adventure and entertainment space. So it started with kind of like the zipline aerial adventure niche. We've added climbing gyms and whitewater rafting and UTV and snowmobile tours and haunted attractions and museums and aquariums and like all kinds of fun stuff, right? So we still have that team that does kind of the small local and commercial insurance lines, but then we have this like pretty sizable nationwide team with team members that focus in each of these different niches nationwide. I personally come from the aerial adventure world previously, so I was actually a client of Granite Insurance when I managed an aerial adventure park and zipline tour. And then I spend a lot of personal time on the river, and so I came onto the team to specifically head up the whitewater rafting niche. So I focus on working with whitewater rafting outfitters across the country and of course, all of the auxiliary activities that go along with that too. You know, people might have some zipline aerial adventure as a part of that or other activities as a part of that. Um, that experience in the past, it really helps provide perspective and just kind of like bridge the gap between adventure operators and insurance carriers. You know, like I personally, I can't say that I have a passion for insurance, but I have a passion for the adventure community. That's where my heart lies. I say this frequently. This is literally the one job ever in insurance that interests me because I get to work with a community that I'm passionate about and provide a service and help bridge that gap. Like insurance carriers speak the insurance language, adventure outfitters speak their language, and I get to kind of bridge that gap and help kind of translate and try and ease the process for outfitters a little bit. So a lot of my perspective today, a lot of the things that I'm going to speak to are a little bit more specific to outfitters, but these are lessons that can be taken outside of that too and can be applied bigger picture to any of your types of businesses. It would be, let's see if I can get this slide to change. It would be really helpful. Corey, do people have the ability to kind of make to comment in where
Yeah,
they're okay.
everyone
So
can drop something to the chat.
yeah, if people can drop in the chat, just like what type of business do you have? Just so I know, because I know not everybody here are outfitters. That's why I'm kind of speaking bigger picture to the group. But it'd be great to just kind of know who I'm speaking to, what types of businesses you guys have that are here. Awesome. Awesome. That's helpful to know who I'm talking to. So thanks, you guys. All right. Um, Big picture. This is kind of what I want to talk through today. So many times I have clients who have an accident and especially like smaller outdoor businesses. They haven't really taken the time to create that plan before something happens. And that's what we want to avoid, right? Or maybe they created a plan, but it wasn't well shared with their team, or it wasn't documented, or they didn't train on it. And so an accident happens. And that an accident happening on its own, especially depending on the level of severity, can bring a lot of stress to the table, right? And so if you add stress to that table by not really being sure what to do or how to handle it or who to communicate with or what to say, I mean, that's not a great place to be, right? So we want to back it up a little bit and not just respond to an accident happening, but have that plan created and know what to do before you actually have to implement that plan. So kind of for just like big picture, if we're zoomed way out, and maybe even before this, kind of like brainstorm a little bit. Think about your business in particular, what types of risks your business has, what types of things could go wrong, and then work on creating the plan. And I'm going to talk big picture about things today, but if you want help actually creating that plan, there are really fantastic resources out there. I've got attorneys, industry attorneys that I can make an introduction to who can help you be proactive in this kind of planning and create like an accident response plan. I've got relationships with companies like Cornerstone Safety Group, which is fantastic and can help do things like this as well. So if you want introductions to people to help with that kind of stuff, you'll see my email at the end, and just reach out to me. But think about kind of what those risks are, create a plan, document that plan. It can't just live in your head, right? It's got to be actually put down on paper in your SOPs in a manual that your employees can access. And then train on it. You know, if you just kind of say, hey, the plan's in here, but people haven't actually kind of gone through that process of what their response would look like after an accident, that still kind of leaves some stumbling blocks. And so actually training your team on it, making sure it's doable and that they know it well. Ideally, they're not even having to reference the SOP document because they know it well enough on their own. Um, and then communicating that plan to your insurance representative, depending on like the accident kind of like severity, possibilities of your business, like the inherent risk of the business that you operate. You could be getting insurance benefits by communicating that plan to your insurance rep. So the carrier cannot give you credit for what you're doing to manage risk unless they know what you're doing to manage risk, right? So it can't just be like, just send over a waiver. Like, yeah, everybody has a waiver. You have to have a waiver. That's like ground level expectation. But if you have this really well built SOP or accident response plan, those kinds of things, communicate it to your insurance so that you can see if you can get some credit, and it might help you manage your insurance premium some. You'll hear me talk a little bit today about claim frequency and claim severity. These are two of the kind of key things that insurance carriers look at when they're evaluating potential clients, potential risks. Claim frequency is like the how often you're having accidents, and claim severity is the like how much was paid out or is planned to be paid out for an accident. So a lot of what we're talking about today, there is some that can impact claim frequency by being proactive, by thinking through these things. You might be able to reduce claim frequency, but claim severity, I think, is where a lot of this kind of stuff comes into play because you're able to, once an accident does happen, you can try and keep the claim amount lower by protecting yourself better, by having a better relationship with the injured person and maintaining that relationship through an accident, by being proactive and just kind of like the documentation that can protect you if it does turn into a lawsuit. So the claim severity side of things is where a lot of it's going to be focused. So I'd like to start again, just like thinking through what those risks look like, right? And then thinking through a guest's journey at your business, whether it's just someone even that's just visiting your business. Maybe you're not like an adventure operator, but someone is just coming to your facility for something that poses risks, right? That adds some general liability risk. So just thinking through some of the things like over here, like after they've arrived, like walking path, looking for trip hazards, if there's some kind of hazard that they might encounter while they're coming in, like having signage on it. But a lot of times you can even hit people with information before they even arrive at your operation in the first place. So your website, especially if you're an adventure operation, your website is a really fantastic place to convey inherent risk, and allow guests to self-select out of the adventure if it's not for them. You can manage their expectations of the types of risks involved, the physical fitness that's required to engage in the activities. Um, a lot of claims come from people saying, I didn't fully understand what this adventure was going to look like or the risks involved. And so having that echoed through every interaction that the guest is having with your team before they even arrive. So on your website, before they even talk to anybody, on social media. A lot of times people overlook the reservations team and enabling the reservations team to have those conversations and enable risk. They're not just sales trying to pull in anybody that they can and locking in a reservation, but making sure that they're conveying the inherent risk of the activity, answering questions appropriately that are surrounding kind of like, well, what happens if this happens? Making sure that they're enabled to have those conversations. The signage at your facility too, once they're there, is really important. Conveying the basic rules of being on your property or engaging in this activity or going over here, this part of your property, having a signage saying like, minimum ages or no alcohol or can't come under here without a helmet or whatever it might be, right? Just having the signage that conveys the rules of being on your property is really important. And then if you are an adventure operation, your orientation, like pre-trip talk with guests, is kind of the last spot where you can do this kind of stuff, right? Where you can convey the inherent risk of the activity, let people self-select out, remind them that once you start this activity with us, you're in it. There's not a way to exit in the middle of the river or something like that. If you go in at the put in, you're going all the way to the takeout. So right now is the time to understand these kinds of things. Video surveillance, thinking about that can be really good too. So, like someone saying after an accident has happened, like, well, they never told me about the kind of risk that rafting entails, and you have a video of them walking right past a sign, or I never saw any signs about minimum age, or maybe they sign a waiver, but they say that they never signed it. It was someone else who signed it under their name. It was fraudulent, right? If you can have like video evidence of this kind of stuff, or even just as simple as someone tripping on your property, um, they might say that they tripped because you didn't maintain your property well. So having video surveillance of especially kind of entryways, is something that can really protect you in the event of an accident. So, big picture in your accident plan, as you're creating it, here are just some kind of things to think about. So, notification, of course, your first priority is making sure that an injured person gets the medical care that they need, right? So, that is the absolute first thing, calling 911, getting them that medical help, looping in your management ownership team because they should know what to do and who needs to be contacted, and then your attorney and insurance team is really important as well. So the attorney, depending on the severity of your accident, they kind of wind up wanting to guide some of the documentation as well. So I have had, one industry attorney that I work with a lot has kind of told me, like everyone has witness statements as a part of their kind of SOPs that they take after a severe accident. But really, what I find is that most witness statements aren't actually helpful. They can be harmful once something turns into a lawsuit and you're in discovery or you're in court or whatever. It actually winds up being harmful the way that they're completed. And so she's kind of said, I'd prefer no witness statements. Like, let's just cut that out or wait until I'm engaged and providing guidance. And she will actually provide guidance on an accident report before that's even filled out. So, sundown rule, like the same day, contact your attorney if it's a high severity accident and look for their guidance on some of that because they might want to guide your team on how an accident report should be filled out or how witness statements should be filled out before you complete those. Because once you complete those and they're filed, that's discoverable documentation and there might be some harmful information in there depending on how you completed it. Um, Insurance, different carriers will treat this a little bit differently, but one thing the insurance team wants to be involved, your insurance carrier wants to understand what's happening so that they can set aside reserves. So if you have an accident, they might set aside some money and say, all right, based on the situation in this accident, we might anticipate paying out $100,000 on this. And so we need to go ahead and set that in reserves. But more importantly for you, they want to go ahead and start building your defense. A lot of times, if you have an accident happen, I've got it right here, could be years before you need any of this. Um, let's say you have an accident and the injured participant talks to an attorney. That attorney is often waiting until just before the end of your statute of limitations before they actually serve you with a lawsuit. And in West Virginia, I think it's 2 years for the statute of limitations. So it could be 2 years before you're even served with a lawsuit. By then, your staff members that were around at the time of the accident might be gone. You might not have a great relationship with them. They might not be willing to provide kind of like information or defense on your behalf at that point. Um, you might have had an accident report completed, but it might have been on physical paper and maybe it got damaged by a little bit of water or by fire, or maybe it's not very legible and it's hard to kind of recall like exactly what happened because someone just kind of like, they had scratch kind of writing and wrote it down really quickly. And so a lot of these things, are really important to collect quickly after an accident and keep in a digital format so that a couple of years down the road, if you do get served a lawsuit, it's all ready. It's good to go, it's documented, it's filed, and it's ready for your defense. So your insurance team will provide an adjuster. They'll work on kind of talking through the details of the accident and starting to collect all of these things so that they can be best prepared to defend you if and when that time comes. So it's important to engage your insurance very quickly after an accident as well. It's a great idea to kind of choose one person to be kind of the quarterback of this whole effort, right? If you have a lot of different people involved in something, people can assume that someone else is covering this part, or the ball can get dropped if you have a lot of people involved. But if you can have kind of one person as the quarterback for this whole effort, other team members might have a play in it. They might have a part in it, but this one person is responsible for making sure that all the boxes are checked. It's a good person, I'm sure this person is probably going to be wearing other hats at your business, but if and when an accident does occur, like they are the accident response director person. Um, I mentioned one way we see a lot of claims come in. Another way is that an injured person just isn't really feeling like they're treated as a human being, right? And so, um, just being genuine and empathetic to the person after it's happened and checking in with them. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but like checking in with them after the accident a couple of days later, um, just treating them like a human that you care about. And insurance will be a part of the conversation likely at some point in the future, but just being empathetic and being present. Um, you can always leave room for questions to defer questions. So like I'll have to consult with the owner, or I'll have to consult with our insurance, or I'll have to consult with our attorney, right? Like there are different kind of ways that you can answer difficult questions by just saying, "Hey, right now I'm focused on getting you the medical attention that you need, and we'll talk about all of that kind of stuff later. We'll get that ironed out together." Um, if you're an adventure operation, you likely have a waiver on hand, right? And so at least getting their name before they leave, and you can track down the waiver for a lot of their other information. Um, if you're not an adventure operation, you don't have those waivers, then you might need to take other, you might need to make other moves to get their information, at least kind of contact information for them or a family member or something like that before they leave, or follow them to care so that you can keep an eye on things and be present to understand what's happening as well. Um, the media is something people often don't think about. This needs to be a part of your accident response plan as well. Like I had a client with a participant fatality earlier this year, and the media was on it. It was in the news within 12 hours. And thankfully, I was able to talk with them, and we've got this person. His name is Skip King, who has a background in the ski industry, but he, in the last several years especially, has been working bigger picture and kind of like adventure or um, like adventure operations. But he works with anybody's like reputation strategies, and he is a great proactive person to pull into these conversations. He can kind of give you some guidance on like how to talk to the press, what to say, what not to say. He can help you write statements that are going to be like pretty standard statements to people, and try and kind of minimize the craziness in the media. So again, reach out if you want an introduction to him, but that can be a great resource. He can also be, I mean, so proactive is the best way to use him, but it can also be reactive. So in this client's incident earlier this year, I was able to get him connected with the client within, I think, 4 hours of the accident happening, and he was already working on that before the press even started reaching out to them. So it can be proactive, ideally, but he can also be an in the moment kind of resource. Getting the media on your side proactively is a fantastic idea. If you can have like a media day and identify like, all right, the big media outlets in my area, who are the main contacts for them, invite them out to your business for a media day, kind of share what you're doing surrounding risk management, all of that kind of stuff. Creating those relationships ahead of time is a really great idea. And just like I said on the previous slide, having one person on point for crisis communications is a really great idea, and leaving that room to defer questions to maybe if you're management, you can say, I don't know, I'll have to consult with the owner or consult with your attorney or insurance, something like that. But having a plan to kind of defer difficult questions. Following up with injured participants again is just a way to make sure that you're being again just like an empathetic human being with them, creating that kind of goodwill with them. Conversations that you have should absolutely be documented though. So once you have like an accident report, maybe 1, 2, 3 days later, you're following up with the injured person or with their family, checking in, saying, all right, like, are they out of the hospital, or what did the doctor say? Like, how did surgery go? Whatever that conversation may be like. Often people say things that they maybe shouldn't be saying in those kind of moments. Sometimes those conversations happen via text, and I tell my clients, all right, screenshot that text, and let's add that to the file. Or if it's on a phone call, document what was said. Someone said in one scenario, like, oh, I told her not to do that, and she went and did it anyways, and like I knew it was risky, like conversations like that especially can be really valuable to document. Um, Depending on the conversation and how that looks, like if you're kind of hearing red flags like uh I don't have health insurance, how am I going to pay for this? Or I think this was your fault, or what do we do about insurance, or whatever. If you're hearing those kind of red flag conversations, consult your insurance contact with that. There might be resources depending on how your program is built. There might be resources to be proactive and kind of like offering goodwill medical coverage for general businesses. It's typically like $5,000. With adventure businesses, that might be built in for like $25,000, $50,000, depending on how your insurance program is structured. But you might be able to kind of have that goodwill coverage to extend to somebody and offer to cover their medical bills so that they're less likely to reach out to an attorney and get an attorney involved and bring like a larger lawsuit against you. Once the injured person has an attorney involved, though, let all of your communication go through your carrier assigned attorney. Halt communications directly with the participant or with their family at that point. So I mentioned your insurance program maybe being able to provide some medical bill coverage before a lawsuit is served. I also want to say this is another thing that depending on your carrier, depending on how your program is built, that reputation strategies contact, sometimes that's built into programs as well. So like most of our adventure clients have that built into their program for up to $25,000 of coverage. So after a high severity accident, they can reach out to this person and get this guidance on how to deal with the media and how to manage that crisis. So that's something to maybe look into before an accident as well and kind of understand how your program would respond to that. I work in an industry, the rafting industry, right, with a lot of high severity accidents. Um, and what I see in people sometimes, like, I think the last several years there's been like a big turnover in the industry where people who have like owned and run operations for many years have been getting out and selling to former guides or something like that. And so there's been a big influx in like of new business owners coming in and managing a business for the first time. And there's a big learning curve with that I love. I love being a resource to these like new business owners and helping them understand their insurance program or manage risk or do all of these things. One of the things that I've seen is that people think that things can be over quickly, right? They want to move on with their life after they have a high severity accident. It's scary, it's really stressful, and they're like, all right, I want to get this over with and get beyond it. And you've got to be prepared for many years of this playing out. It's not a quick process. You've got to take care of yourself in the process, and space out your energy through that as well. So, like I said earlier, West Virginia, I think, is 2 years statute of limitations. So you might not even be served with a lawsuit until 2 years after the accident. And then after that, there's a whole process that could last additional years down the road before things are settled, right? Another thing that I see is people just kind of thinking that they can handle settlements themselves. That's a big mistake as well. If you talk to an injured participant and you arrive at a settlement amount without involving insurance, then you need to be prepared to pay that settlement out of your own pocket. You can't expect insurance to pay a settlement if they didn't agree to it. They have to be involved in driving that conversation if you want your insurance to pay the settlement. So don't make that mistake. Have conversations with your insurance, loop them in every step of the way, ask them questions for guidance on like where you can or can't be involved in that conversation. Um, and just know that like in the discovery process, once you're served with a lawsuit, you're pulling all of these documents, you're sharing them with the other attorney. There's conversations going back and forth. This is where all of your dirty laundry gets aired. So if you have built really well rounded out SOPs and then your team didn't actually follow them, that's going to be a red flag. That's going to be a mark against you, right? So as you're creating these SOPs, make sure that they're actually doable as well, that you can follow them, that your team can follow them. Um, Also think about things that are discoverable that you might not have thought of before. So after an accident, one of the things that I've seen go wrong are staff members are texting each other about the accident, or they're texting a loved one about the accident. All of that is discoverable. So if they say like, hey, this team member didn't do this and it caused this and it's been like a crazy accident today, that's discoverable information that can be really against you in the court system once you kind of get to that part of the process. So think about anything that's like written down, even if you have a staff conversation that's like it's not written down, but it's a conversation you all have in a room. A staff member can be deposed and can wind up sharing some of that information. So that's another reason to get an attorney involved sooner. If you have an attorney your attorney be a part of that conversation, then that can protect that conversation from being discoverable. So get that attorney involved quickly, allow them to guide and be a part of it so that it can be protected information and not have to be shared during discovery down the road. Think about doing like an annual analysis, especially if you have like a high frequency of accidents. Look for trends in what you've got going on. Do you have a lot of claims occurring? So think about like, is there any kind of trend? Do they happen in like the same location, or is it the same type of injury? Um, or is there like a specific staff member that's involved in all of those scenarios, right? Like look for trends, whatever that might be. Keeping track of your accidents over time, like in an Excel document or something, can be really helpful to do this as well. And then having that kind of date on the calendar annually. All right, this is when we provide an analysis for last year's claims and kind of like look for these trends and try and decide kind of what to do in response to them. So just coming back to the takeaways, right? Like we need to create that plan. So spend time brainstorming what can go wrong at your operation, putting together a plan to address these different scenarios. Often people can do a pretty good job of creating this plan on their own, but it really takes it to a higher level when you get a professional involved, like an industry attorney or like a consultant that does safety in the workplace kind of stuff, that can really take it to the next level. And again, going back to its impacts on insurance, that can absolutely have an impact on the kind of concession that your insurance carrier is willing to offer you. Um, Again, it can't just exist in your head, right? Actually documenting the plan and training your team on it, working through mock scenarios at your operation of like, okay, if this happened right now and I wasn't here, what would you guys do? And letting it kind of play out in front of you, having those mock scenarios play out. And again, making sure it's doable. If it's not doable, then that can be a mark against you guys in court down the road. So making sure that it's actually something that people can abide by, and that your team knows it well. It's not something that they have to think through because that just adds so much stress to an already stressful situation. All right. And went over a lot there very quickly too. Look at that time. So here are 4 questions. And Corey, I think you're facilitating some Q&A.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ruthie, for sharing all of that insight. There's so many things that you're saying. It's like, oh, that makes complete sense, but I could see how you could also easily overlook that with all the other kind of things that you have in the mix. So for folks who do have questions, feel free to come off of mute. I'll kick the kind of Q&A off with the question of, many businesses, especially in the adventure side, outfitter side, have been diversifying their offerings like on site. And sometimes there's like self-guided kind of tours, so to speak. And I'm thinking specifically like they might have like trails on their property or a certain point of interest that they promote or something on the property, but it's not something necessarily that the guest is like hired a guide to go like find out about, right? Um, have you seen anything in the industry, like any claims coming about, like regarding those types of scenarios where you have a guest on property, they go to do something on property, they might hurt themselves, and is there, um, yeah, like, have you seen that scenario play out before?
Yes. And like the way that insurance will respond to that will vary depending on like the level of responsibility that the operator has in that scenario. So if they are like, let's say you provide lodging and there's just a hike that people can walk to on their own time whenever they want from their property. Like that's a low level of responsibility on the operator side of things. But let's say it's a situation where the operator provides transportation to the trailhead. That's going to raise the level of responsibility a little bit more, like for example, to make sure that that person actually makes it back, right? And so that's like I will just say big picture from, I'm an agent and I work with all kinds of carriers and um, just speaking a little bit to the carrier perspective that I hear quite a bit on these kinds of situations, that's like their number one concern quite often is just making sure that if you are like they're unguided operations where like you're renting someone a tube, right? Like okay, how are you confirming? Like they're renting a tube, you're taking them to the put-in and they're tubing down this river. How are you confirming that this person got back? So having some sort of inventory, some sort of like maybe it's just a buddy system, right? You don't allow singles. Everybody has to be with a buddy. And so like that buddy, you establish kind of like, all right, you guys watch out for each other. You make sure that you come back together, but some sort of system to make sure that people are returning from their adventure if you do have a level of responsibility in that. Um, there's also sometimes like there are questions on like, all right, well, who is maintaining that trail? How often is it, like looked over? Is there like a person who walks it daily or a person that walks it weekly, or are they walking off of your property onto like BLM or National Park Service land where they are taking the responsibility for maintaining the trail? That relieves the pressure on the actual operator in question as well, if someone else is responsible for maintaining it. So there are different questions like that that come up in conversations with carriers.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that was a really great answer. Thank you so much. And anyone else have questions, feel free to come off mute.
I have a couple, but I also want anyone else to go first if they do. Hey Ruthie, so let me understand if I heard this right. This might be a really stupid question. Is it recommended to have a different lawyer that specializes in just your insurance world versus like, a small business has their lawyer, right? Is there like lawyers that obviously there's lawyers that specialize in this kind of thing, but if you're just a small outfitter in our
Mhm.
state, you probably only have one lawyer. So that's the lawyer you should contact, not like a specific, right? I mean, is that a
No.
problem? I would imagine like there's definitely, some lawyers are going to know a lot about this and some are not. And
Yeah.
then also on that same level, as I'm hearing you say that let's pretend, for most of the folks on the call know that I have a whitewater experience and I have been on some trips where some, terrible things have happened. And usually you have like a debrief after the trip. So if the lawyer is in the room with the staff, that protects them because the lawyer can say this is because it's kind of under his or her preview. So
Yep.
that's why maybe also even considering having a local lawyer, someone that can be there quick could be. So again, my brain's just going on a couple different things,
Yep.
but any recommendations on because it seems like the lawyer is a huge
Yep.
piece of this puzzle.
Yeah. Great question. I am so glad that you asked that because it allows me the opportunity to clear up a few things that I might not have been clear on. So I don't recommend having multiple lawyers. Now there might be a scenario where like there's just some basic business documentation that you just need somebody like local for that's not specialized in the industry. It's like incorporating your business, or like whatever, right? Like that's fine. But for like that might just kind of be a one-off sort of situation. Generally, I would recommend getting an attorney that is an expert in your field, in your industry. So in my world, there are a couple of attorneys specifically countrywide that are my like go-tos for people. One especially that I send like most of my clients to. And she's not, I'll say like she's out west. She is not like what's it called, licensed or whatever in every single state, but she has enough context to be able to advise people in all 50 states. So like she can help people with like putting together waivers. or she can help people after an accident. Sometimes people, like a lot of times, that will just come out of people's pockets because they want an industry specific attorney to represent them, right? And like to give them that guidance immediately after an accident. When a when a carrier is involved with an accident, and I'm kind of all over the place here. Sorry, I'm trying to be concise with the way I'm saying this, but the carrier has the right to choose your attorney and to be a part of that process. So a lot of times, yes, Leah Corrigan. A lot of times, that attorney might just kind of choose someone that they've worked with who is not industry specific, who doesn't have a lot of that context, but fits their budget. Right. And so there are some scenarios like that where like you might have an attorney out of pocket immediately after an accident providing guidance and stuff. But then as things actually turn into a lawsuit, you get served. The carrier might assign their attorney that they are paying for to actually defend you moving forward. I'm trying as much as I can to eliminate that. So we have, for example, a program, a custom program that we at Granite have created with a carrier that's specific to outfitters. And we have Leah Corrigan is one of them. We have a number of industry specific attorneys that we have gotten approved in that carrier program so that we don't have some attorney who doesn't know the industry at all getting assigned to that case. We actually have industry specific attorneys that can be supporting and going through that process with our clients. And so that it can be covered by insurance from day one. The fatality that my client suffered a couple, like earlier this year, Leah was not an approved, like with their specific carrier at the time, Leah was not an approved attorney in that carrier's program. It was a different carrier. But I was able to work with the adjuster and say, hey, this is a big accident. We need really good legal guidance on this. I have this industry attorney. I know that they're not approved in your program yet, but I would really recommend considering them because I think it's going to impact the amount that's paid out on this accident. And so they met with her, they interviewed her, they did a whole kind of thing. And they wound up saying, all right, listen, Leah is out of our budget. This is how much we have approved to spend on an attorney. But if the client wants to use this attorney, what they can do is we can pay, this like 90% of it. And then the client can choose to pay the last 10% out of pocket if they want this industry specific attorney. And so that's what they chose to do. So there are all kinds of different conversations. It's going to depend on the situation. It's going to depend on the industry. It's going to depend on the severity of the accident or the carrier involved. Ideally, we are taking all of that out of the picture and we just have one attorney that is guiding a business from start to finish. But there are scenarios where other attorneys might have to get involved for different reasons. The big question or big answer to your question, sorry.
No, that helped a lot because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, there has to be lawyers that obviously, are know niches better than other niches, and there's no one lawyer that can do it all, right?
And I've also seen a scenario where the carrier assigned one attorney, but that attorney was just kind of really like a shell, right? The client hired Leah to advise that attorney. And so they paid for Leah out of pocket, and that the carrier's attorney was just kind of a shell that Leah was speaking through. So I mean, there are very creative solutions that you can have there.
One other question for you, because I know that this might be something that could speak to some of our audience. Do you have any recommendations? This is a hard one. Get ready, Ruthie.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendations for somebody that's in a specific outdoor niche and they can't find affordable insurance? I have known of a couple of clients, of old clients of mine when I used to be a coach that couldn't find, I know that a couple of them we actually spoke about, but Could you tell us a little bit more about what you guys specialize in and what you would recommend for somebody that is in the outdoor space? I don't know, let's say a fly fishing company or a ATV company or something, and they can't find insurance. Do you have any recommendations for those type of folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like the some of the industries that we have specialties in, again, my focus niche is whitewater rafting or kind of river outfitters, including tubing and stuff. But we have UTV snowmobile tours, we have like hiking tours, we have haunted attractions and surf parks and aquariums and museums and aerial adventure, including like zip lines. Like we've got team members on a ton of different things nationwide. But here's the thing is that carriers in these inherently risky industries, um, the carrier wants to see quite often a minimum premium. So they're saying, all right, this type of operation poses this kind of risk, right? Like if an accident happens, that accident could pay out $1 million, right? This is like high severity, high frequency industry. But they are going to try and look at your SOPs, understand the way you manage risk, and make a decision to insure you. But they're only going to do that if they're at least receiving X amount of premium. Because they're saying, like, if I just charge, $500 in premium and then I have $1 million claim, I mean, that's not a profitable business for the insurance carrier, right? So they need to look at things and they need to trust that you're managing risk well. So giving them that whole kind of story of like, this is how long I've been in the industry. These are my really well thought out and documented SOPs. This is how I train my employees. This is how I manage risk. If you had an accident in the past, not just saying, oh, yes, I had this accident, but coming with a proactive story to it and saying, hey, this is what happened. This is what we have changed in our operations because of it. Shows like a proactive mindset and a like work to improve things, and it can gain carriers' trust a little bit more instead of just saying, "Hey, this happened," but coming to them with what are you doing differently to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again. Um, but yeah, I mean, carriers are like they need that kind of story. It can't just be fill out an application and be done with it. Like if there are things that are higher inherently risky about your business, you need to provide that story to go along with it. But so some carriers, like a lot of our carriers in our kind of custom program has a minimum premium of $10,000. So, if you're like a smaller startup business or something like that, know that like if you're looking at your premium, your general liability premium as a percentage of your revenue, it might kind of be a high rate just because you're a smaller business and you're still growing. But as you grow, maybe the carrier achieves that minimum premium and then like you're good to go. Like you might be paying, trying to figure out like how to explain this. A carrier might say like, I'm not going to insure your business for less than $10,000. And so that's a high percentage of your revenue. But as you grow, that minimum premium, like you might surpass that minimum premium already. That box has been checked. The carrier doesn't need to charge you a high rate. That percentage might of your revenue might kind of go down as you continue to grow. So that's something to look at as well.
Is there any sort of like general rule of thumb of how much a small business, if you're in startup phase, of how much you should expect to pay for insurance? Or is that way too hard of a question?
It's a really hard question.
Yeah, I
It
bet.
depends on so much. I would say with most of our adventure operations, we will typically kind of provide some guidance of like maybe 6% of your revenue for all of your insurance policies, right? General liability, excess, workers' comp, property, like all of the above. But again, that's going to be highly impacted by carrier minimum premiums. It's going to be impacted by accidents that you've had. I mean, I've seen that jump up like 25, 30%, depending on kind of what the history looks like of claims.
And then did I also hear you kind of right? Like maybe don't always take no for an answer, or maybe have a plan before you ask for insurance would be.
Yes. So, um, that's part of your agent's job is not taking no for an answer. I mean, yeah, like we've got to like force carriers to do things sometimes to the best of our ability. But like it's much harder once a carrier says no to something, it's much harder to overturn that decision versus if you can be proactive on things and not wait for them to say no and then say, wait, but I did this. If you come to the conversation proactively with these things, that can be much better for you.
And one last thing, and then I'm done. I just when I used to guide out in California, and I know that that was different than anywhere else. I'd never seen this before. In California, when the trip leader did its safety talk, we handed one person on the bus the waiver. A customer had to go through and check to make sure that we said everything on our, kind of to-do list for the safety talk. And then that customer signed it off. I've never seen that done in any other state, but I always thought that was really interesting. And to be honest, even from a guiding standpoint, you were like, yeah, I have sign off from a customer, not
Yep.
another guide. So anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that done in Idaho. I see Corey saying that he's seen that in West Virginia as well. Like, I've definitely seen that like operations specific, especially for like bigger multi-day trips, or like getting into class 5 or something like river. I mean, I've seen that a little bit more often in those kind of like more risky scenarios. But I think that is. I mean, people can't say after an accident, well, they never told me about this. If you have another customer signing off saying, yep, they talked about that, right? Like that's such a fantastic additional defense to be able to present.
In our last few minutes, I want to open it up for anyone else. If there's any other questions from I have you mentioned, and we only have a couple minutes, so we don't have to go super deep into it. But like there's been a big need, say specifically around some of our gateway communities to some of our public lands for transportation, and sometimes the transportation is bringing people to and from activities,
Mhm.
but the transportation folks don't have anything to do with the activity themselves, but they are very much like benefiting off of like the outdoor recreation that's taking place. So, like just thinking like say a shuttle company that might shuttle you from a trailhead to a trailhead or from like the takeout up to the put in, and they're helping you facilitate the movement of your gear and anything. Is there any risk there with what the people do before or like or after um, utilizing that shuttle for that business, or is that business like separated completely from that, as long as they're not like renting the gear to them?
Sorry, Corey, I'm trying to understand your question. So you have a business, like let's say like this business is our client
Hmm.
and they aren't providing transportation to this activity. It's another company that's providing the transportation.
So let me so it's a say private boaters, and they all go to the takeout, and then they hired a company that has a van and a trailer to come pick them up and take them to the put in, and then those
Mhm.
private boaters get onto the river and come back to their car. That company that facilitated the driving of those people to the takeout to the put in, do they carry
Mhm.
the risk of what happens like otherwise?
I mean, I don't want to say no outright because I feel like there can always be some scenario in there where like they could have some liability in the situation, but generally no, especially as you said, like I heard you say they're not doing like the rentals or anything like that. If they were renting the equipment to that person, it'd be a different story. But
Hmm.
if they're just providing that transportation, I'd say like generally they're going to be okay and released from liability.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Understood. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for that. All right. Well, it is the last minute of the hour, and Ruthie, I really appreciate your expertise and insight on this. I learned so much, and was really looking forward to hearing your expertise on this. And um, it I will follow up with everyone in an email and share Ruthie's information and this recording. So please share out this recording to any partners or folks that you think might benefit from it. But until next time, everyone, thanks so much for joining the webinar, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much, Ruthie.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.